subpoena is invalid, it's unlawful, and there's no obligation to respond to it. We'll be making all of these arguments in a motion to dismiss filed on April 8th. There are several other important arguments to be made on a motion to dismiss, but next up is additional briefing on the advice of counsel issue.
What do you say the Supreme Court precedent is, or that's President Biden's decision and not President Trump's decision to revoke executive privilege?
Well, it's not exactly what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court, you know this, I'm sure, that Justice Kavanaugh also wrote an opinion that it's been well settled since Nixon versus GSA that the former executive also has the right to invoke privilege, and we can imagine why. The former executive may have had conversations with other members of the executive branch or consultants that he or she, well, we don't have a she yet, but that he brought in to consult with, and therefore those things should remain privileged. The question that still remains is the extent of the privilege the former office holder has, and we seem to hear that in the more recent case, certainly from the DC Circuit, that the current holder of the office can override the former holder of the offices.
In Justin Clark's emails to Mr. Costello, though, even he suggests that you guys were going further than what he was saying in his letter regarding privilege. He says in his note to Mr. Costello that he was not saying that Steve Bannon had immunity from showing up whatsoever. So does that give you any concern about the argument you're trying to present?
I think you're mistaking something. Although that exact language, you're mistaking something. That language, which actually appears in the email, doesn't reference the fact that pursuant to the Office of Legal Counsel opinion issued in May of 2019, which, as we mentioned before, is binding on the executive branch, which includes the U.S. Attorney's Office. That subpoena was null and void at the moment it was issued. They said it was unlawful, illegal, unconstitutional, and incapable of being enforced either civilly or criminally. And here we are criminally. In other words, they said that the United States Attorney's Office should not have proceeded to take this to the grand jury.
One other question for Steve. Why didn't you just show up and then say you couldn't answer any questions?
It's all been argued inside.
Because that's exactly why the advice of counsel defense has to come in. He was instructed by his attorney, Mr. Costello, not to show up, because that's what the Office of Legal Counsel opinions say. They say that the subpoena is not valid. You don't show up if there's not a valid subpoena. That's why advice of counsel is very important in this case. But beyond advice of counsel, this reliance on the Office of Legal Counsel opinions is a critical issue. It's a matter of due process. A defense that applies is called entrapment by estoppel. When a public agency puts out a position paper, the public is entitled to rely on that. If you rely on that, then the authority, in this case the Department of Justice, own documents, own binding legal authority, said what we have cited already. In that case, there is stopped, as a matter of equity, there is stopped from prosecuting that would be in contravention of the policy that they announced. We'll make all these arguments on paper.
Hey,
Mr. Bannon, what's your big takeaway?
For Mr. Bannon, when you walked in, you called this noise, the January 6th committee and subpoena noise.
Yes, it's
Do
noise.
you recognize?
I think.
Do you recognize the significance of January 6th? That it was a riot, that it wasn't violent.
This has nothing to do with the January 6th. Okay, this has nothing to do with January 6th. It has nothing to do with January 6th. All of this is noise.
They're investigating
All
January
this,
6th.
and by the way, the judge is very fair.
Let me say
very
this.
fair. January 6th. That is all. What is essential to my work is taking down the illegitimate regime of the Biden administration, and I do it every day. I do not consider them legitimate. I've stated this many times. I think this election of November 3rd is stolen, and I've gone out publicly day after day after day. Number two is to make sure this November, by an overwhelming vote, we destroy the Democratic Party as a political institution, which we will do as a national political institution.
Destroy might be troubling in the wake of January 6th.
No. I said at the listen to what I said. I said at the ballot box. You've seen all the polling. You've seen how we're doing in South Texas among Hispanics. You've seen how we're doing among African Americans. You see how low Biden's the illegitimate regime polling is at all-time lows. And I've said, so don't put words in my mouth and don't try to spin it. I've said at the ballot box, we have an overwhelming, and we're going to take 100-seat majority in the House and start to turn things around. And number three is always at the root of all this and all the national problems is the Chinese Communist Party, and we're going to do that. That's the three. That's signals. All of this is normal.
Mr. Bannon, what do you think of the FBI spying? One more thing in response to your question. I will say this, because I've said it before publicly, and I believe it strongly. What happened on January 6th was important, and if it's important, then it's important to have a full and thorough investigation. This would be the last membership of a committee that one would expect that from. Why? The chairman appointed the committee announced his prejudgments ahead of time. He sued former President Trump specifically based on the events of January 6th and specifically said that he, the chairman Thompson, suffered personal injuries from it. That's not what the American people need in an objective investigation. Raskin and Schiff have written books about the issue. They've made prejudgments. The American people deserve better. If the issue should be investigated, it should be investigated thoroughly. Focusing on this case, Mr. Bannon, what do you make of the FBI?
Hang on. This is what I said. Remember when I came out last time and addressed you? When I came out and addressed you guys last time, I said, I'm not just doing this for me. This is not MAGA. This is not America First. This is for everybody. And the behavior of the FBI and, quite frankly, DOJ has been outrageous to my attorney, right? And the attorney-client privilege and everything that they did. And that's going to be worked out in court. But it's honestly outrageous, and to have a thing where they say it's an interview when in fact he's sitting there making the case and he's had a meeting to put forward the evidence. This is why this thing's so important. It's not important just for Steve Bannon. It's not important for MAGA. It's not important for Trump movement or for America First. This is important for everybody, and it's particularly important to the media, to CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post. This case is very important, and for all the information, everything that was in the background of this, everything that went to the grand jury, everything ought to come out. The media ought to have, the American people ought to have access to all the information about this.
It's in your interest.
It's in your interest. That's what we're fighting
Mr.
for.
Sherwood,
And
one
I
more
said
question.
that last time.
Did you say you're going to file a motion to dismiss on April 8th?
April 8th is the date the court.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.
Councilman,